Thank you so much, Diane. It's beautiful as always. And welcome to everyone, all of you who have found a way to come to the North Chapel today, despite all the traffic, the beautiful, bountiful leaves everywhere, the autumnal weather. We are so glad that you are here. Mary Blanton recently sent me a podcast of Krista Tibbetts, interviewing a woman named Priya Parker on the art of gathering. I was so inspired that I found a way to get to Yankee Bookstore yesterday, despite the traffic, to get a copy of her new book, and I want to share some of it with you. This is the new book, The Art of Gathering. Oops. I want to share one of her opening thoughts. Why do we gather? We gather to solve problems we can't solve on our own. We gather to make decisions. We gather because we need one another. We gather to show strength. We gather to honor and acknowledge. We gather to build companies and schools and neighborhoods. We gather to welcome, and we gather to say goodbye. Welcome to everybody. I have a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We ask that you remain masked throughout the service and maintain social distance from each other while inside, as hard as that is. And I haven't got mine on just because you need to understand what I'm saying, but I'm doing the social distance part. There are many announcements on the back page of your order of service, but an additional one, important one, is that there is a lasagna dinner this afternoon at 3 o'clock, which is here in the parlors for SE families. And for those of you unschooled in UU logo, SE stands for Spiritual Exploration. It's what we used to call Sunday school. You may have already received an invitation and may have RSVP'd. If you are just hearing about this or haven't yet RSVP'd, please see Leon or David Parker. And David, can you raise your hand so people know who you are? After the service, if you would like to attend, all are welcome. There are hearing devices, I believe, at the back of the church. Feel free to borrow one. Someone at the back and when you can help you with that, perhaps, if you need it. And we are very lucky to have Chloe Powell here today to help with childcare. You want to raise your hand, and at some point after we, you'll hear in the service that we'll hum all the kids out after the chalice lighting. If you are visiting and haven't yet signed the guest book, that also is in the back by Ann Winya, by the back door on the table on the left. We'd love to have you sign that. And many, many thanks to all of those who have made today possible, from the flowers to the music, the greeters, even the contact tracers. If you have a chair or chairs downstairs that you brought here for the outdoor service, if you could please take them home afterwards. It's getting too cold to be outside, even with a fire pit. And last but not least, please turn off anything that buzzes, jingles, or beeps for the service. Our in-gathering song today is called Sound Over All Waters, which is number 122 in the hymnal, but there's a catch. Please understand that due to these pandemic times, we are not singing together, but instead are humming. It's a way of sharing good musical vibrations together. It really is a thing. So let's please stand as you are able and hum together, but not quite yet. I'm going to read the words of the hymn just so you know what we're thinking. Sorry, I said stand, but then I thought maybe I should read the words first. Sound over all waters. Sound over all waters, reach out from all lands. The chorus of voices, the clasping of hands. Rise, hope of the ages, arise like the sun. All speech flow to music, all hearts beat as one. That is the first verse, and we're going to hum the third verse as well, which is sound trumpets of triumph for marches of peace. East, west, north, and south, let the long quarrels cease. Sing songs of great joy that the angels began. Give glory to children to woman and man. Today, Reverend Leon will be reflecting on Know Thyself. He shared with me a story about a woman named Jenny Odell who wrote a book about how to do nothing, resisting the attention economy. A young woman named Jenny Odell has traveled a path of self-discovery. She traveled this path by slowing down, by doing less, and then finally by doing nothing. She wrote a book about the process, and she called it How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. The book is doing well. So much in our world is vying for our attention these days. How do we find peace upon the seas of anxiousness and urgency? We all do what we can. Jenny Odell found peace in an interesting way. She listened to the rain. In 2018, there was a rainstorm that resulted from an atmospheric river. The rainstorm resulted from an airborne rush of water that was coming from the Philippines. I'm half Filipino, Jenny Odell said, but I've never been to the Philippines. So I have this weird relationship where I feel connected to it and distant from it at the same time. As someone who is both Asian and white, I am an anomaly. Things like the atmospheric river give me an image of how to be from two places at once. The sampaguita is the national flower of the Philippines. The flower originated in the Himalayas before being imported in the 17th century. I remember that not only is my mother an immigrant, but that there is also something immigrant about the air I breathe, the water I drink, the carbon in my bones, and thoughts in my mind. When we make peace with how complex we are and with how complex life is, we begin to know ourselves more deeply.
Thought is the sculptor who can create who you want to be. A journal entry by Henry David Thoreau in 1841. Wake up. You are life on earth. Joanna Macy in Climate Crisis as Spiritual Path. An Old Dog documentary film. John Dunkley and Ann Mixon. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope this new day finds you well. Welcome, dreamers and seekers of spirit. Welcome to the bold and the bashful. Welcome to the wanderers and to the worshipers, here to give their souls a rest. Welcome to the darkness and the light. Open up mine arms, Spirit, to the open and to the broken ones, to the blissfully imperfect who are just like you and just like me. Blessed and beloved, caring and compassionate, held, whole, and honored by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls I say good morning. It's so good to be together. So much is possible on earth and in heaven, do you think? Even in this continuing time of strain and crisis, so very much is possible, but it isn't limitless, right? Life isn't so starkly black and white. Constraints have certain freedoms, and freedom itself has limitations. Both are true. There is a push and there is a pull to life. We give and we take. We win and we lose. Does this sound familiar or accurate? Now, I believe that the creative soul within us can do just about anything. The wise old sage within us, the learning child, the poet, the artist. But do you think, let's say, that artists are capable of sculpting the gentle petals of a sunflower out of stone, out of wood, or bone, or clay, or late October pumpkins? Do you believe that artists are capable of sculpting the wild complexities of the human heart? Maybe only life itself is so capable an artist. Do you play volleyball? Does anyone play volleyball? Do you ski? Do you play hockey or table tennis? or do you prefer to describe yourselves as non-competitive? I never believe people when they say that. I ask because there are moments in sports that bring us to peak experience, and I want to know myself at peak experience. I feel like that would help me make better sense of these days and make better sense of the days when I just don't feel like getting out of bed. I want us to know each other at our best, but maybe that's just me. Not everyone appreciates the greatness of life in the same way. I know. The same things don't always work for any one person all of the time, but sports are different to me because in sports, opposites coincide. Sports holds together great extremes, and that's powerful. It's theological even. The coincidence of opposites is a theological term. It has a physical application, opposite hands held together in prayer. It has a metaphysical or religious applications too, and I'm drawn to that. I like things that invite me, that move me, that push and pressure me to get beyond myself. And sports can help me to do that from time to time. Sports and poetry. It's an odd combination, but it works for me. Now, I'm not out about all of this yet. I'm still in the closet about it. I'm not yet public. Although I share it with you freely this morning, but I have not told my family. Until I do, let's keep it quiet, okay? But very soon, I know, one day, when we can all be our truest, peaceful selves, you will see me standing in the bleachers in Fenway Park at the height of baseball season with a bullhorn in one hand and my dog-eared copy of the Norton Anthology of Poetry in the other, and I will be yelping a line of poetry between the pitches. Now, die-hard baseball fans might describe this gesture as redundant. They might say that professionals in the commentator's booth are doing this poetry already, offering free verse poems in perfect time and rhythm. Such poems aren't accessible to everyone, only to the most deeply committed. It sounds like chatter to everyone else, but to the most committed, it's poetry. Here's an example. There's a fly ball in right center field. The outfielder is there and calling. He makes the catch, and the Red Sox move on, advancing to the division series, and they are mobbing each other at the pitcher's mound. That's poetry. Of course, in baseball, it's only poetry if your team wins the game. I would not have quoted this particular poem if the Red Sox had lost. Of course, poetry is still poetry, win or lose. It's we who change. Only us. The game itself is where opposites are conjoined. Coincidentia oppositorum, as they say in Latin. Although Alan Watts was not a baseball fan, he was a theologian, he talked a lot about coincidentia oppositorum. He talked about the coincidence of opposites. Now, Watts was raised as a Christian, but later became a Buddhist and a teacher, a world traveler. In his estimation, Buddhism does a better job of dreaming about the afterlife. According to Watts, the Christian version of heaven is just as abominable as the Christian version of hell, because no one wants to be in church forever. Now, I resent that line personally. Continuing in Alan Watts. Nobody wants to be in church forever. Children are absolutely horrified when they hear the hymns that say, "Prostrate before thy throne to lie and gaze on thee." They can't imagine what this imagery really means. End quote. To lie prostrate on the ground is to lie facing downward, and yet to gaze at thee implies the reverse. Are we facing down or looking up? It's confusing poetry or a paradox. It's hard to say. Watts says, in a very subtle and theological way, I could wrangle out a statement that could make this all quite profound. To be prostrate at once and to gaze upward, on the other hand, is a coincidentia oppositorum, a coincidence of opposites, which is very deep. But to a child, it's a crick in the neck. Young children and wise ones are bigger soul than we are sometimes. We usually choose a side. We pick a team. Or we don't care because things like baseball don't really matter. But for young children and for the wisest ones, things like baseball matter exquisitely. Not because we win or lose, but because we play. A teacher named John Keating once said, now devotees may argue that one sport or game is inherently better than another. For me, sport is actually just a chance to have other human beings push us to excel. When we play the game well, this is what happens. Not for the winners, but for all of us. When I was a kid, I used to listen to a poet, a sports commentator by the name of Jim McKay. I grew up in an age of Howard Cosell and Phil Rizzuto and a guy named Jimmy the Greek, who was less than kind. Jim McKay was my favorite. He was nice. He was the host of a show on ABC that was called Wide World of Sports. I loved that show. It was all about heroism. Of course, it was about games. It was about auto racing and swim meets and tennis matches and ski jump competitions and track and field. The list of possibilities went on, but the show always began in the same way. Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition. And the trumpets and the horns were blaring in the background, and then timpani, boom, 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 boom. The timpani drums were drumming up all the excitement. And it was also thrilling, and it was brought to us by Lincoln Mercury, the car dealership, and by Goodyear, the maker of the steel radio tire, and by State Farm Mutual. Like a good neighbor, State Farm was always there. Even the commercial advertisements were good-natured and heroic, bringing us the coincidence of opposites, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. Now, there's such division these days. Embattled pundits on TV shows like Shot in the Dark or Crossfire are shouting at each other as loudly as as loudly as I can, and cable network news shows are confirming their biases, it's not even worth talking about talk radio. Like Anne Marinello mentioned earlier, so many things are vying for our attention. It's hard to find peace on anxious seas, and now the Facebook controversy. And I have to say, though, I'm impressed with the insider, the whistleblower, the woman who came forward, Frances Hogan. Against the odds and against the grain, she stepped up to do what was right. Hero. She found balance enough to speak out from heart and mind. She said, "My name is Frances Hogan. I used to work at Facebook. I think Facebook has the potential to bring out the best in us. But I am here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken democracy." Opposites coincide in Frances Hogan. She sees Facebook as both a good thing and a bad thing. It is a chance for distant friends to reconnect and stay in touch, and it has the tendency to deepen divides, weaken democracy, and tear us apart from one another. It's counterintuitive. It's strange to imagine that this social media platform can also be a source of isolation and loneliness, but it can be. And Frances Hogan knows that. She knows that life is full of contradictions. As she argued before Congress just last week, Facebook wants us to believe in false dichotomies, in false choices, that we must choose between divisive content and free speech, that we must choose between public oversight and personal privacy, that to be able to share fun photos of our loved ones with old friends, we must be inundated with anger-driven virality. "I'm here to tell you," she said, "that that's not true. These problems are solvable," end quote, "but we need to keep our balance. We need to find and keep our balance." And how we do that in times as crazy as these is difficult to say. All we really need to do is grow our souls. But who knows how to do that right now? The young at heart know how to do it, the young at heart like Jenny Odell, and the wisest elders know how to do that. The wisest elders like Joanna Macy. They are bigger souled than we are right now. We choose sides and pick teams they don't. They live more deeply than we do. But of course, they do not live more deeply than we can, if we choose. All of us can share in the wisdom of the game. It's paradoxical to hold two things at once, to win and to lose at the same time. How we do this is not new. It's as old as the arts of war and the arts of peace. The arts of war are thousands of years old. The arts of peace are brand new every day. There's a Chinese military strategist whose name is Sun Tzu, and he wrote a book called The Art of War in the 5th century, more than 2 millennia ago. Even though it's old, The Art of War is still considered to be, and this I quote, "the most influential strategy text in East Asian warfare," and it has influenced both Eastern and Western military thinking, business practices, legal strategies, lifestyles, and beyond. This 25-year-old text is filled with sharp wisdom. Sun Tzu reflects on life and death, and conflicts are conjoined on a battlefield. He reflects on joy-based and sorrow-based conflicts that are conjoined within our hearts. Sun Tzu makes his insights plainly. He is perfectly clear, even through the translation. Sun Tzu writes, "If you know your enemy and know yourself, You need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself and not your enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer defeat. If you know neither your enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. The outward battle begins within. The key is obvious. Sun Tzu would have said this himself. The key is know thyself. It is the necessary and the hardest and most fundamental step on the hero's journey of becoming one's self. Know thyself. In a movie, a wise sage woman says, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Knowing yourself is just like being in love. No one can tell you how to do it. You just know it through and through. As far as I can tell, Jenny Odell is going through this process. Slowly by slowly, she is coming to know herself. The Filipino part. The white part. She comes to know herself slowly. That's how it happens. I'm sure there are exceptions to this rule, but it's almost always the case. Jenny Odell is being honest and being fierce about the process. She's being heroic, and so can we. She's being heroic because she is finding ways of making peace slowly, quietly, by way of the art of doing nothing. I find her journey fascinating, and I've learned a lot from Jenny Odell. She talked about studying the migratory patterns of a beautiful songbird called the western tanager. It travels along the Pacific coastlines of Central and North America, finding homes on the shores of Mexico and British Columbia. Static homes if measured by human earthbound sensibilities, and one flowing home if measured by atmospheric qualities. It depends on your point of view, which way you see it, but both are true. When we are young enough at heart, or wise enough in spirit, we can see that both are true at once. Jenny Odell said, as someone who is both Asian and white, I am an anomaly. The atmospheric river, the cloudy and airborne rush of water that came from the Philippines, this gives me an image about how to be from two places at once. When we are young enough and wise, this is natural and obvious. When we are healed and whole and healthy, we don't find contradiction here because complexity is normal, it's common. It's just life. It's just the kind of life that leads us to understand miraculous experience. Because life is too magical to pigeonhole, it's too wild to box and encapsulate. It's too strange to categorize or quantify. It's too precious to reduce and to measure, too holy to constrain or confine. It's too important to imprison, too important to chain down, to tie down, to subdue or to tame. Even life's quiet and uneventful little miracles escape our grasp with ease when we try to hold them down. All of our lives are changed in these days of COVID. We don't know exactly how, but we're working on it. Life is different than it was. Life has greatly changed and changed too quickly. I want it back. We want it back. We want things to return to the way things were. So we invent all of these strategies. We pigeonhole and box and encapsulate. We chain and constrain and confine and tie down who and what we are. It feels safer when we do it. And we should do this sometimes so that we are not always at wit's end, so that we can enjoy the wealth and luxury of laughter every day, filling us, even against the challenges that we face, filling us with the great and gentle touch of grace. We can find this all around us in the world, in the balances of life, in sun and moon, in joy and in sorrow, in thrill and in agony, in youth and in wisdom. We can find all of these in the coincidence of opposites. Now, I'm romantic, right? That's obvious about me. That aspect of my personality is plain and visible. My practical sides are harder to see. Parts of us are obvious, and other parts of us are hard to see. When we harden with fear or in pain, or when faced with anxiety and doubt, it's common that we only see the obvious. That life is hard right now. But when we relax and let go, the parts that are harder to see become visible, just like the leaves that hide their true colors until this time of year. Now, the art of war tells us how and when we can fight. The arts of peace let us know that we don't have to do this. On the cover of your orders of service, there is a picture that was taken by a friend of mine, a friend who lives in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, not far from Rye, where you were, Richard. The picture is of a sunflower that was grown in my garden at home, and I gave that flower to a friend at the end of our recent time together, and she took it home with her. And then she took a picture of it as the moon rose over the ocean. The sun had set behind her, but was still reflected over the shoulders of the sunflower and into the camera by the rising of the moon. We can find all these balances all around us in this world. Balances of sun and moon, of joy and sorrow, balances of thrill and victory, balances of youth and wisdom. May they lead us as we journey together on the good way forward. May it be so. Blessed be, Ashe and Amen. As we move toward our hymn, The Lone White Bird, that we will hum, I found the humming to be surprisingly moving. And I'm not going to kid you, you all looked quite silly doing it. But it's fun. The words are these. The lone wild bird in lofty flight is still with thee, nor leaves thy sight, and I am thine. I rest in thee, great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of earth are in thy hand. The sea's dark, deep, and far off land, and I am thine. I rest in thee, great Spirit, come and rest in me.
We are so glad that you joined us today. After a summer of lovely outdoor services, the chill fall air has encouraged us to come back inside. It was lovely to be together in the sanctuary today. For safety's sake, we will continue to wear masks, sit in socially distanced way, use our 2 new air filters, and keep the windows open as long as the weather permits. This fall, we will offer an expanded video of our Sunday services on YouTube as we learn about and discuss other ways of making our Sunday services available. We'd love to get to know more about you. You have gotten to know us through watching our YouTube videos. Now we would like to get to know you. We understand that distance and health concerns may prevent you from joining us in person, but would you be willing to let us know who you are, where you live, and how long you've been watching our Sunday services? I hope that you will send us an email introducing yourselves to us to office@northchapelvt.org. You can also find this address on our North Chapel website at the bottom of the landing page. And while you're there, we invite you to check out the Connect and News and Events sections to learn of all the opportunities and activities that are available on Zoom. We would love to have you join us. Thanks for coming.
Tough and peculiar enough for the battle, we hold the balance of safety in one hand and the joy of recognition for the happiest of birthdays in the other. We push against the rules of the world and find peace inside of ourselves. And in spite of the troubles, or maybe because of the troubles, we find new things in one another. James Taylor has a line where he sings, we have seen it before, in times of great sorrow, that human compassion is going to flow from a well that has long run dry. Tap in and feel the water. It's flowing beneath your feet. May you have a beautiful day today. Wish us luck and wish us well for the SE dinner tonight, and enjoy this beautiful atmospheric cloudy river day. May it be so. Blessed be and amen.